Section 47 of Journal of the Reverend Francis Asbury, Volume 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Brian Keenan. New York, Monday, 4. We came on and stopped at Goshen, at Captain Wright's. The people flocked together at a short warning, and I gave a discourse on Isaiah 35, 3-6. After which we dined, and came on across the hills and over dreadful rocky roads to Cornwall, where Brother Watcoat preached in the meeting house on "We know that we are of God, and the whole world lieth in wickedness." Tuesday, 5. We had another tolerable siege over the Housatonic River and hills to Sharon. Here Brother Watcoat preached on "The Lord knoweth how to deliver the godly out of temptation, and to reserve the unjust to the day of judgment, to be punished." I gave an exhortation, and then we came rapidly, 15 miles, to C. Levy's, in the 9 Partners. Wednesday, 6. We came to Rose. Bishop Watcoat preached on 1 John 4:17. I gave an exhortation. We then came on to Robert Sands's, and lodged all night. We came on to Freeborn Garretson's new design, upon the Rhinebeck Flats. He hath a beautiful land and water prospect, and a good, simply elegant, useful house for God, his people, and the family. We have ridden between 80 and 90 miles since last Sabbath, not less than 550 since we departed from New York, and 1/3 of the roads were rocky and very uneven. I read a book of about 500 pages, the author of which is a curious writer. Friday and Saturday, 8, 9. We regaled ourselves and horses upon the pleasant banks of the Hudson, where the passing and repassing of boats and small craft, perhaps 50 in a day, is a pleasant sight. Sunday, 10. We had a sermon and administered the sacrament at Brother Garretson's, and notwithstanding public worship was held at the Dutch church at the same hour, we had a large congregation. Bishop Watcoat and myself filled up the service of the day. Monday, 11. I rested and visited Dr. Tillotson at his very elegant country seat, beautifully situated. The house is finely set round with trees, and there is a charming view of the North River. I was unwell internally. I must always take great heed to what I eat. Tuesday, 12. We came through Poughkeepsie. No place for Methodism. We stopped at Elijah Morgan's. Brother Thatcher was preaching when we came in. We have ridden 25 miles this day, and dined in the road upon a watermelon that Mrs. Tillotson was kind enough to give us as we came by her house. I was so unwell that I had but little appetite for anything else. Wednesday, 13. We came on 25 miles to Cortlandt town, where we saw the aged, venerable pair, the lieutenant governor and his lady. He is in his 80th, and she in her 78th year. I had a very rocky ride over the mountains of Peekskill. I have great and sore temptations at times, but God is with me. I trust through grace to overcome them all. We stopped at Warren's, fed, talked, prayed, and refreshed ourselves a little. Thursday, 14. This day is very warm. I preached at Peekskill town upon the Great Salvation. Brother Watcoat preached at Croton. We lodged at General Van Cortlandt's. Friday, 15. At the Plains, Richard Watcoat preached. I gave an exhortation. We then rode on in haste to the widow Sherwood's. Saturday, 16. We pushed on with great courage towards New York, but when within 6 miles of the city, my horse blundered twice, and then came down with great force and broke the shaft. I got out, and my horse recovered from his fall. A smith's shop being at hand, the shaft was mended in an hour, and we came into New York and found our service was wanting in the city, there being here only 2 preachers, and one of them disabled. Sunday 17. We had much rain, the streets flowing with water like streams. I gave them a sermon at the Bowery Church on "Who gave himself for us, that he might redeem us from all iniquity, and purify unto himself a peculiar people, zealous of good works." And at the Old Church, John Street, I spoke on "But we are not of them who draw back unto perdition, but of them that believe to the saving of the soul." It appeared most advisable to stay a while on Monday, to have a new shaft put to the carriage. We landed at Powell's Hook about 5:30 o'clock, and pushed on to Newark. New Jersey, Tuesday, 19. We came off at 5 o'clock, and reached Brunswick by 12 o'clock, where we dined and rested, and then continued on to Joseph Hutchinson's, at Milford, 46 miles. We had a pleasant and cool ride for the season. Wednesday 20, we came on to Hewlett Hancock's, and on Thursday 21 reached Philadelphia. I preached at St. George's, and Bishop Watcoat at the African Church. Pennsylvania, Friday 22. We rode to the valley. It was warm enough. Bishop Watcoat preached at Daniel Meredith's. Saturday 23. We had a proper siege up to Sauterstown, and got in by 4 o'clock. I gave a discourse on Hebrews 10:38-39. Sabbath day 24. Bishop Watcoat preached at Martin Boehm's church, on Psalm 72, 16-20. We have now ridden, from Monday, 170 miles. We lodged at Abraham Keegay's. Our Dutch Methodists are as kind and more lively than many of the American ones. Monday 25. We crossed Susquehanna at Emcall's Ferry. It is narrow, but very deep and rocky. After feeding man and horse, we came on to Sittler's Mill, on Muddy Creek. As we were 10 miles from the place we intended to reach, well wearied, and having bad roads before us, we brought to an anchor here for a night. What time I have had to read, write, or journalize, those who know the distance and difficulties that must have attended me through the last week may judge. It would be impossible for me to relate all the workings of my heart, but I trust my soul has been kept in patience and devotion. Maryland, Tuesday, 26. We came into Maryland. Sometimes we had no roads, and at other times old ones that the wagons had left. Thus we bolted and blundered along the rocky rivulets until we came within sight of James Fisher's. The meeting had been appointed at the Widow Jolly's. The house was large, and we had no small congregation. They came, some to see and some to hear. I had walked where I feared to ride, and it was exceedingly warm. But I took courage when I saw the people. The portion which I gave them was 1 John 2, 24-25. We had hardly time to eat and breathe before we had to beat a march over the rocks, 8 miles to Henry Waters's, upon Deer Creek. Brother Watcoat went ahead and preached, and I came on time enough to exhort a little. Wednesday 27. I preached at the Forks Meeting House, 15 miles on a carriage road, warm as it was. Brother Watcoat gave us a good sermon upon Psalm 116:7. Return unto thy rest, O my soul. I exhorted very little. The heat continued. That evening we came with equal difficulties to Perry Hall. but the greatest trouble of all was that the elders of the house were not at home. The walls, the rooms no longer vocal, all to me appeared hung in sackcloth. I see not the pleasant countenances, nor hear the cheerful voices of Mr. and Mrs. Goff. She is in ill health, and writes, "I have left home, perhaps never to return." This intelligence made me melancholy. Mrs. Goff hath been my faithful daughter. She never offended me at any time. Thursday, 28. At Perry Hall, I preached on Matthew 11, 28 through 30. I was visited by Elders Bruce and Snethan. I heard the reply to Mr. O'Kelly's apology, soft and defensive, and as little offensive as the nature of the case would admit. I was invited to town with the assurance that there was no danger of the fever, but it was very bad at the point. Friday evening, 29. I held forth in Light Street on Psalm 115:1. Not unto us, O Lord, not unto us, but unto thy name give glory, for thy mercy and for thy truth's sake. My improvement was the application to Christians. First, to contemplate mercy and truth in the dealings of God to them in the gospel. Secondly, that they should disclaim all glory to themselves. Thirdly, how the Jehovah God giveth glory to himself, and how we should glorify him. Brother Roberts wrote that they were 1,000 strong in Baltimore. That there hath been a work in Annapolis is certain. Indeed, it begins to be more and more general in the towns and in the country. Saturday, 30. We had a most severe ride, nearly 20 miles, to Daniel Elliott's. At St. James's Chapel, God hath begun to pour out his Spirit, and almost generally through Montgomery and Frederick circuits. Wilson Lee is all upon the wing in the work. Glory, glory, glory. I will not speak of numbers or particular cases without more accurate information, which in my haste I cannot now obtain. But without doubt, some hundreds in 3 months have been under awakenings and conversions, upon the Western Shore, District of Maryland. Sunday, 31. At St. James's Chapel, I preached on Psalm 37, 39, 40. We had an attentive, solemn sitting, and powerful prayer closed the whole. We dined and rode on 5 miles to Henry Hobbs's. The people heard of us and ran together in the evening. Brother Watcoat gave a lively discourse upon these words: "Thy children shall be all taught of God." We had a very quickening season. Perhaps 600 souls in this district and in Baltimore have been converted since the General Conference. Hartford, Baltimore, Calvert, Federal, Montgomery, and Frederick feel the flame. Monday we hobbled along to Clarksburg. On the way dined at Joshua Pigman's. Here I once more saw his brother Ignatius. Art thou he? Ah, but oh, how fallen, how changed from what I knew thee once! Lord, what is man, if left to himself? Brother Watcoat attended the meeting, and the people continued in meeting at Clarksburg until the morning. Tuesday, September 2. At the Sugarloaf, my subject was Luke 10, 2 through 4, compared with Matthew 13, 16, 17, and 1 Peter 1, 10 through 12. We were crowded. In the exhortations, prayers, and singing, the power came down, and the work went on until evening. I then rode to Mr. Morton's. Virginia, Wednesday, 3. We came to Leesburg. Some said, "Go this," and another, "that way." We made it nearly 20 miles, and were riding 6 hours, and crossed the Potomac at Conrad's Ferry. Brother George was preaching. Bishop Watcoat spoke upon, "He that believeth shall not make haste." But we had to make haste, after I had ordained S. Welsh and Eskridge Hall to the deacon's office. After we had dined, we rode 12, if not 15 miles, to the widow Rosel's. We came in about 7 o'clock, and I gave a discourse on 1 Timothy 4:16. We have traveled about 150 miles through Maryland, and we have had bad roads, but have met with good people. My soul hath been agonizing for a revival upon the western shore of Maryland for many years, and now the Lord hath sent it. Thursday 4. We came to Rectortown. Most distressing roads for 18 miles. The gentry had made a dinner at a small distance from the town, a kind of green corn feast, with a roasted animal, cooked and eaten out of doors, under a booth. I was greatly wearied with the ride, but was animated while explaining 2 Corinthians 6:1. I then came to Benjamin Hitz. We have penetrated through Loudoun and Fauquier counties in 2 days. Friday 5. We stopped at the courthouse and were richly entertained with a breakfast at Mr. Johnson's. Then we rode on to Norman's Bridge and passed another old field feast with a race tacked to it. We came to Roger Abbott's, upon Mountain Creek, in the forks of the Rappahannock River, and on Saturday 6 to Cobler's, where many attended from different and distant parts. My text was 2 Timothy 2:15. We pursued our way 6 miles to the river, and lodged at a widow's house, whose husband died in the Lord a few years ago. We had an awful Sabbath day's journey, through part of Culpeper and Louisa. We came to Ferguson's about half after 1 o'clock. The people were waiting in the warm sun. The house could not hold them. After a little rest, I cried, "Now is the day of salvation." We had a hungry ride for 30 miles. Monday 8. We rode to Latsley's meeting house, 18 miles. Many people were gone to court. Consequently, few at meeting. But the Lord was eminently present whilst I enforced Habakkuk 3:2. Tuesday 9. We rode to Rosanna in Fluvanna County. I have seen the hot, warm, sweet, yellow, red, and now have passed the green springs. When we came within 6 miles of Magruder's, Brother Watcoat being in the carriage, the hindmost brace gave way. I took hold of a sapling by the roadside, and put it under the body of the carriage, and Brother Magruder mounted the horse, and we soon came to his house. That evening the breach was repaired. I took William M. Kendry's horse, and went on 14 miles, to Richard Davenport's, in Amherst, where we were kindly and comfortably entertained. Wednesday 10. We rode 20 miles through heat and over hills, to North Garden, Tandy Kegs, Albemarle County. I was divinely assisted while I opened 2 Timothy 4:2. 1. Preach the word. 2. The application of it, that is, reprove, rebuke, exhort. To time his work. Be instant, in season, out of season, in the morning, noon, and evening of life, when it is the winter, spring, summer, and autumn of the church, in her pleasing and unpleasing prospects. Thursday 11. We rode to New Glasgow, 30 miles, and were entertained most hospitably at Colonel Meredith's. Friday 12. We rode to Lynchburg, 20 miles. Samuel Mitchell had dinner provided in town, at Mr. Miller's, for the preachers. I preached in the Masons' Hall, a warm day and place, on Titus 2:12. We then beat along to Samuel Mitchell's, 3 miles of rude roads. Saturday 13. We rode to New London Academy, 16 miles, now under the direction of Samuel K. Jennings, a local preacher of ours. The institution belongeth to the Presbyterians and Episcopalians. R. Watcote preached. I was deprived of my rest the last evening, and very unwell. Yet I gave a short discourse in exhortation. We have been going at such an unreasonable rate that I have not had time to put pen to paper for a week together. Good news from the South District of Virginia. Brother Jackson writes, 200 souls have been converted this last quarter. There is a revival in all the circuits but 2, and great union among the preachers and people. I am kept in patience, faith, and love. Sunday 14. We rode 16 miles to Liberty, and preached in Bedford Courthouse. I was sick in earnest. When I came up into the crowd, the people gathered around my carriage, as if I had had a cake and cider cart. This sight occasioned a kind of shock that made me forget my sickness. After alighting, I went immediately to the throng in the courthouse, and founded a discourse upon Matthew 22:5. What great things the gospel revealeth to mankind! First, the love of God. Secondly, the sufferings and death and merits of Christ. Thirdly, the gifts, extraordinary and ordinary, of the Holy Ghost. Men make light of all the blessings of God, and of all the miseries and consequences of sin. They not only think lightly of, but are opposed exceedingly to them. For the carnal mind is enmity against God, and the things of God. I admired the attention and solemnity of the people, many of the men standing in and out of the house the whole time. We rode 2 miles to Brother Patterson's, and dined, and then came on to Blackwell's to lodge. Monday 15. We had a heavy march to Fincastle. I rode 9 miles to Mr. Ripley's, and then gave up the carriage to William M. Kendry, and took his horse, and came in about 10 o'clock. My subject here was Isaiah 52:7. First, the gospel, good tidings of God, of Christ, of the Spirit of grace, of glory, by comparing temporal with spiritual things, to restore the dead, the blind, the lame, the dumb, the sick, the poor, publisheth peace with God, with conscience, with all men, good tidings of good, the spreading of the work of God, salvation, from all our sin, misery, and death. Zion, thy God reigneth, the glory of Christ's kingdom. The feet of the messengers, beautiful, because of their message, their holy walk, their treading the mountains, enduring hardship, their innocence. We made it 40 miles from Liberty to Edward Mitchell's, where we lodged on Monday. Tuesday 16. We began our route for Holston by English's Ferry through Montgomery County. The first day we came to Mrs. Dially's upon Roanoke, 28 or 30 miles. The river ridges were very rough. Mrs. Dially received us with great maternal attention and affection. Here I was told of my appointment at Rebou's, 10 miles west, over the mountains. It gave me some grief, but it was too late. I was advised not to go Pepper's Ferry Road. Wednesday 17. We passed Montgomery Town and Courthouse among the mountain barrens. We pushed on to Christians. They are British people. We had an acceptable rest for a very warm day. We came to the ferry and lodged at Draper's, a very quiet house, that night. Thursday, 18. We came to Wythe Courthouse, a pleasant town of about 20 houses, some neat, and most of them new and painted. We had good accommodations at Mr. Johnson's. Both man and horse needed it. Friday, 19. We began at 6 o'clock to bend for Holston. It was computed to be 40 miles distant. We came in about the going down of the sun at Father Carlock's, a German. For 2 days past we found we could not stop to dine. We rested only to feed our horses. After we cleared the mountains, we came upon the Perpetual Hills. I judge we may charge for 130 miles from Edward Mitchell's in Botetort to Russell's old place upon Holston. We took Saturday to refit and write. Brother Watcote attended the meeting. My mind hath been kept in peace. I had enough to do to drive. I could think but little, only now and then sending up a message to heaven. Sabbath day 21. We attended at Carlock's. A very sultry day, and many people were present. My subject was 2 Timothy 6, 2-12. It was judged best we should ride 10 miles to Scott's, in order to make Edward Cox's the next day, to attend at Acuff's. Tuesday, 23. As we came off, it began to rain, and that rapidly, with little intermission for 2 hours. The horsemen were dripping. The roads were so bad that it was with some exertion that I could so shelter myself as not to get wet to the skin in the drowning rain. Monday we passed Abingdon, which is greatly improved. Breakfasted at Craig's, and then had a pleasant ride to Cox's, but it is excessively warm for the country and season. At Acuff's I talked a little upon coming to the throne of grace. We hasted home with Charles Baker upon Holston. If we have a dry moon and month, we may get through the wilderness. Wednesday, 24. We rested, man and beast. We have ridden 60 miles since Sabbath evening. I am not as patient, dependent, and prayerful as I wish to be. Bluntsville looks very respectable, and they have built a needful and good bridge at the end of the town. We crossed at Charles Baker's by putting the chase to 2 canoes and swimming the horses over Main Holston. The stubble fields were upon the north side, so that we were compelled to work through the woods into the road to Snipes Ferry. We came along 8 or 10 miles where they had made new cuttings. At last we struck into a new road, and strayed 3 miles out of our way. We then returned back 2. Now it was that I felt properly content to leave my felicity, so called, before it came to the wilderness. We made it nearly 30 miles to Ball's Mill. We had no time from 6 in the morning till 7 at night to feed man or beast. Friday, 26. We rode 21 miles to Benjamin Van Pelt's, upon Licking Creek. We fed our horses twice, the riders not once. Here I left the horse and carriage, and borrowed a horse to ride to Kentucky. Saturday rode 20 miles across to Holston Quarterly Meeting at the stubble fields. I now rode upon horseback, and the rain came on powerfully until we were dripping. I had no cloak but the carriage covering. The rain took shoulders, elbows, and feet. For 8 miles it was violent. I had not been so steeped for 4 years. I washed the wet parts with whiskey, and did not take the damage I feared. O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? Bishop Watcote preached. Our local brethren were loving and lively. Brothers Van Pelt, Wells, and Winton. Sabbath day 28. We had a good sacramental and speaking time. I preached on Titus 2:14, and Brother M. Kendry from Psalm 11 2 through 6. I was led to recollect the loss of time and difficulty met with from Bodetor to Holston, 100 miles. Few friends, rough roads, 1 week lost in riding. End of section 47. Recording by Brian Keenan.